Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to allow people to filter in a little bit. And as per usual, as you're filtering in, please let me know in the chat box where you are joining me from, how you found me, how your day is going. Go ahead and share with me whatever you would like. I am going to get myself situated here. And please, please, please let me know if you can hear me and see me okay. That's another big thing about these webinars. Sometimes they don't start the way we intend them to. So please let me know in the chat box if you can hear me. Oh, hey, Melanie, about a year. Girl, we're besties now in Orlando. Oh, thank you, Anne. Thank you so much. So nice of you to join me from the UK. Appreciate you being here. All right. So if you've been with me on, Hershey, Pennsylvania, the infamous Hershey. Okay, so if you've been with me on a few webinars, this one's going to look and feel a little differently. And in fact, this is the first time I'm testing this out. So I would love to hear how it goes. And I will have the chat box open, so definitely keep me updated on if things are difficult for you to see, hear, etc. I wanted this particular presentation to be very tactical, very interactive, and for you to actually see how I'm implementing the concepts as opposed to just talking about the concepts. So we'll have the presentation slides that I will have up on my desktop via PDF, and then I actually will have a calendar open. And instead of toggling back and forth in Zoom, anybody who's ever tried to do that, it's very difficult. I'm gonna have them both open on my desktop at the same time. I've blown them up. I'm trying to make them big enough for you guys to see. You don't necessarily need to see exactly what's in like the meeting holds and calendars that I'm putting in there. But what I would love is that you guys can actually see what I'm doing, if that makes any sense. For this particular presentation, I will be showing you how I use the calendar in Gmail. Don't leave me. The concepts do apply for multiple email platforms. They just may call it something different and the button may just live somewhere else. So if I know what Outlook or iMail calls it, if you use Yahoo, Hotmail, all of these things are built in. So it's just a matter of finding the button somewhere else. As you walk away from this presentation and you're like, I need to be able to do this on Outlook, a simple Google search is going to take you to some sort of help article or video that's going to show you exactly how to do it. The other thing is, if you've been following me for a while, these concepts are going to sound familiar. As I said, I'm getting super tactical with this one. I'm going to show you how I actually do it and how I coach people through doing it. So it's like a little free mini coaching session. So welcome. So if you've heard the concepts before and you're like, yeah, Jen, I get it, stick around because I'm also going to show you how to do it. Deal? Deal. All right, cool. So I'm going to share my desktop. And hopefully not mess this up. Here we go. There we go. So if you can just drop me a quick chat in the chat box and let me know that you can see everything just fine, that would be really helpful because again, this is the first time that I am going to be doing it this way. So any feedback is immensely helpful as we go along. If anyone's curious, my backdrop is the Disney castle. So as you see it poking through, that's what you're missing out on, is the beautiful Disney castle on my desktop. All right, so thank you, Jennifer. All right, let's get started. So this is my calendar that I have up that I'm going to be giving you the tutorial in. And that way I can just show you how it actually works. And so let's get to the presentation. All right, digital calendars. Y'all here to talk about how to use a digital calendar as your super tool. This is one of my favorite tips to give people because we often go out and buy all these apps and try to do all these things and set up automations, and we invest a lot of time and energy into tools and we completely skip over this magical tool that is included in every email client. So I want to show you how to use it and how to leverage it in a way that is super purposeful. I'm going to try and show you some tips and tricks that you may not be as familiar with, or you've heard about and maybe haven't implemented them. And I'm going to show you how quickly it can be done with my live demo. Okay, so let's get started. If you have not met me before, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm super high energy and fired up because I love teaching people. I love coaching, and I love talking about productivity, which is the least sexy subject on the planet, but I'm here to talk about it. So I have 15 plus years of administrative and project management experience ranging through a number of industries. And what I found is that there are definitely different tactics and techniques that are universal. And so my goal here is to share with you all the universal foundational tips so that you can work better, so that you can get on with your life. So I'm wildly enthusiastic about personal and professional development. I am really interested in how things work, how things function. I truly believe the TV show How It's Made was made just for me. And then also all things Disney, in case you couldn't tell by my background. And then also I have like a Disney hat right there. So we're going to get started here. All right. My philosophy for all things is that there is no best way to get work done, just the best way for you. So as we're talking through these and you're like, man, that tip sucks, that would never work for me, let it go. You don't have to use it. I'm not telling you that this is the recipe for success. I'm just saying this might be a few ingredients for you. So please, it's not just my trainings and not just my content, but as you're out in the world and everyone's trying to tell you how you should work, please put it through your own personal filters of what feels good for you, and only accept what doesn't feel like more work for you, okay? Because the goal is to get you on with your life. All right. Scheduling your tasks. If you've been around my universe at all, you know that this is my top thing that I wish everybody would do. And I'm going to show you why. First, why? Why, Jen? Why should I schedule my tasks? I have a to-do list. I know what my priorities are, and I just kind of fit it in wherever I can. First and foremost, if you start scheduling your tasks, not if, when, we're going to talk about when you start scheduling your tasks, you will start every day knowing what your priorities are that day. That sort of clarity cannot be purchased anywhere. When you wake up in the morning, you can look at your calendar and you're like, all right, this is what I have ahead of me. This is what I need to tackle today. The second is that you actually ensure you have the time and energy set aside to honor your commitments. So if you've told somebody, yeah, I'll get that to you on Thursday, and you're in all-day meetings on Thursday, like, come on. So at least you'll be able to work it in and say, you know what, we have a lunch break on Thursday between my meetings and I can answer that email then, and you schedule it in, you won't forget it, and you'll ensure that you continually remember that you need to do it. The other thing is now you're going to be empowered to make informed decisions about your time and your capacity. I've talked about this extensively on all of my social media platforms, but this is one that I really, really, really want to drive home. That if somebody stops you in the hallway, or I guess sends you an email right now and says, hey, I really need help with this, do you have time? If you're a yes person or a natural helper, your instinct is to just say yes. And what I found is when I schedule my tasks, I can say, give me a moment, let me check my calendar. I pop up in my calendar and say, yes, I can help you this afternoon. Yes, I can help you, but not until tomorrow. Is that okay? And that way I'm making informed decisions about my capacity and also setting expectations with other people. It's a great boundaries exercise. The other reason you want to schedule your tasks is that when life sideswipes you, you now know your calendar and your tasks are all that, don't get lost in the mix. So a great example of this is I got a call a few months ago that my son needed to be picked up from school. He was running a low-grade fever. He wasn't allowed to be at the school, and I needed to come get him. And I knew with him being home, that's all I was going to do that day. And so I was able to look at my calendar, not only know exactly who I needed to email to reset expectations with, I also knew how much time I needed to find somewhere else to complete my work. So it was really empowering to be able to say, you know what, Cam's homesick from school. I'm going to need to shift this a little bit. I can get to it tomorrow morning and have it back to you by 10 o'clock. Is that okay? Does that work for you? Does that honor your commitments as well? And then that way it's good customer service, but also I feel like I can just let it go. And that's the last thing that I don't have on this slide, because I really wanted to talk you through, is when we have a to-do list. That's great, right? You've written it down. You know you'll get to it eventually. When you start scheduling things in your calendar, you're actually setting aside the time to address it later, which allows you to fully release the I need to remember to do this. Gosh, I hope I don't forget to do this. When you place it on the calendar, you can actually let it go knowing you'll get to it. You've set aside time and energy later to get to it. So I'm going to show you how this works. I have a few guidelines, and don't worry, the replay will be sent out. So if you don't get all these notes down before I start demoing, you will get it later. So first and foremost, you need to create some sort of system of scheduling. I typically do all of my scheduling on Friday afternoons. I do my brain dump on Friday afternoon, and then I go into my task list and I kind of pre-plan the next week with some buffer space in between. I don't like, not every minute is planned out. And that allows me to go into the weekend knowing that like next week I already know what priorities I need to address and I've already made time for it. It also makes me more agile. If something weird comes in over the weekend, I know what I can shift and still know what priorities I'm moving around and what I'm negotiating. So as you get into this, first and foremost, please know that this is also commonly referred to as time blocking. So if you're really into this and you want to do additional research on the internet, time blocking is a common term used for it. And a lot of productivity tools will actually call themselves time blocking tools instead of scheduling tools, what have you. To get started, I want you to consider what you do daily, weekly, monthly, and annually. Start with your recurring tasks. So if there's something that you need to do every day or something you want to remember every day, start putting that into your calendar first, and then go weekly, monthly, annually. And when you start thinking about these things, don't just think about your work stuff. Think about your personal stuff. And this is my favorite example, is every November, I forget to buy my turkey for Thanksgiving, and I forget to take the turkey out of the fridge 3 to 4 days before Thanksgiving so it can thaw. So I'm the one that's spending all darn day, like the day before or the day of, giving the turkey an ice bath because I forgot to thaw the turkey. So now I have a recurring reminder the second week of November to buy my turkey, and a recurring reminder on, I think it's the third Sunday of November, to take my turkey out of the freezer. So think about these other things that you commonly do. You're going to schedule them into your calendar as appointments. And so you're not going to use any, project management tool that automatically throws it on there. You want to actually schedule it onto your calendar. The other thing to consider is consider batching your work. So if there's a certain software that you need to use, try to get all of your tasks into it. A great way to show this is, I'm a big crafter and I really like using my Cricut, but if anybody out there uses a Cricut or Silhouette, you know that getting all the equipment and all the stuff out takes a lot. So I actually make a list of all my projects and I batch them together in one afternoon. That's essentially what you're going to do. This is no different than if you're going to go out and run errands and you pre-plot out all the places you need to go, right? You need to go to Target, you need to go to the grocery store, you need to stop by the post office, and you don't go to Target and then come home, and then go to the post office and then come home, and then go back out to the grocery store and come home. You actually pre-plan out what order you're going to go in and all that. Same deal with trying to batch your work. Try to figure out what similar brain functions you're using, what sort of same softwares you're using. If you need to work with another person, instead of having 15 different meetings, can you have one big like work session and then create an agenda, say for the first hour, we're going to work through this, and then the next hour, we're going to work through this. So there's different ways to batch your work that I highly encourage you to do. And then the frequently forgotten, if you have big meetings coming up, schedule prep time. If you have a meeting, schedule follow-up time. So if you have to send out emails, add things to your to-do list, provide documentation, schedule that in. And then of course, schedule travel. And I'm not talking like putting the flight in your calendar. I'm talking making sure that you schedule time to actually get to the airport. I'm talking about scheduling travel time between locations. Make sure you're scheduling that into your calendar. So I'm going to show you what this looks like for in practicality. So here is a very empty calendar. This is my demo calendar. And so I've made up some meetings. These are meetings. And we're going to build this throughout the entire presentation. So this is not exactly what I'm suggesting you do until we get to the end and you'll see it all come together. So this is next week. I have a team meeting, I have a project follow-up, and I have a company all hands. But, you know, a recurring thing that I want to make sure I do every day is I want to make sure I take lunch. This seems really trivial, but I'm telling you, this has saved my bacon multiple times. If it's going to work for me. There we go. A little bit of oh, it reset itself. Okay, so let's try this again. I'm going to make this a recurring, sorry, it's giving me all the tutorials. There we go. I'm going to make this a recurring thing because every single day while I'm at work, I want to make sure I take lunch. And then say every Monday, I need to make sure I submit the expense reports to accountant, and I need all the time to do the receipts and fill out the reports and send it all in. So I'm going to save that, but I'm also going to make it recurring, and I'm going to make it recur weekly on Monday. So I know every Monday I need to touch my expense reports. This is what I mean. So those are recurring tasks. And say for this team meeting, I need to get a bunch of materials together, and I need to make sure that I've set time aside to like look over the agenda, look over the materials they've sent for me. So prep for team meeting. And because, oh, okay, I have this expense report here, but I also have this team meeting, I know I'm going to need to debrief from the team meeting. So, and these are the sort of things that you're just going to start building into your calendar. And I really encourage you to think through what you actually need time for, right? So, and even if it's super simple, like meeting follow-up, and then I'm going to schedule in, this actually does exist on my calendar. Brain dump and weekly wrap-up. So this is what I want you to start doing, is start thinking about, okay, if I'm building my day, what's a priority? What do I need to do? Say I'm actually participating in the company all hands, so I'm actually going to set aside time to finalize slides and send company, or so speaking in regular English is helpful too, and send for company all hands. So now I've set aside time to work on something that I have a deliverable later in the week. And it's also great because now I also know that if Tuesday gets derailed, I have time on Wednesday to do it. Like I said, the goal is not to schedule out every single moment of your day. Leave gaps, allow for buffer time, be flexible, but make sure that you're honoring your commitments each day. Under normal working circumstances, I would say not to schedule more than 3 priority tasks a day. However, given the current environment, I would actually tell you to shrink that down to 1, especially if you have little ones at home with you. So it all depends on what your capacity looks like and what you can work on and how much time you need, because maybe I haven't touched my slides at all and I'm not ready and I actually need half the day to do it. So the other important part of this too is as you get through your work week and say, I did my expense reports on Monday, but it only took an hour and a half. I would actually, I would shrink that down to show that I only spent an hour and a half instead of 2 hours. Because then as I get into the habit of scheduling out these tasks and looking at my weekly calendar, if I'm seeing that every week I'm only spending an hour and a half, I can then change the recurrence to an hour and a half and gift myself back a half an hour in my day that I can use for other things, whether it's for meetings or finally working out or putting in another priority. So as you start building your calendar, you're going to schedule it in like this. Now, I mentioned when I was talking before that you shouldn't be you shouldn't be using a task management tool to filter it through. And the reason for that is it's really hard to manage the task management tool in the way that they throw it into your calendar. So by telling the task management tool to give it a due date and then it lands in your calendar, it's not as agile if you move it around. So the way that I actually use it is I have my Trello board and I look at my Trello and say, what do I need to schedule? And then I put it into my calendar. And we're going to get into a shortcut there if you have tasks that come in through email. So next slide. If you have tasks that come in through email, or you have emails that you need to treat as a task, it's going to take you some time to answer that email, provide that documentation, et cetera, et cetera. You can actually turn emails into calendar appointments. I'm showing here the Outlook version and the Gmail version. When you are in your inbox, if you right click on the event or on the email in Outlook, or in Gmail, if you click the Actions tab up at the top, they will give you these menus. Both these menus pop up. And in Gmail, you can click Add to Tasks, and then there's a task calendar in Gmail right here on the side. It's built into every Gmail calendar. Just have it turned on, and it will drop it into your calendar, and then you can move it around wherever you want. In Outlook, you can also send it as an appointment or a meeting or a task. I encourage you to just do it as an appointment. That won't ask you to invite anyone, and then you can move everything over. The major benefit to this is it's going to take everything from the email and put it into the calendar. So if there's attachments, if there's body of text, if there's anything like that, it's going to transfer over into your appointment so that you don't have to go dig through the emails and find all the things and reference back to it. You can just pop it open, be like, oh, that's what that's about, open attachment, handle it, and then go back to your inbox and send it. So that's one of my favorite shortcuts. I use it all the time, especially if somebody sends me an email and I need to send them a thoughtful response that I know is going to take me some time, like 15 to 30 minutes. I schedule it on my calendar and I carry it over straight from the tasks, straight from my email inbox. Okay, second tip is color coding. Surprisingly, this is something that a lot of people go to my website for a blog post. And so I wanted to touch on this because I think a lot of people like the idea of color coding. They just don't know where to start. So I think the benefits of color coding are pretty obvious, but we're going to talk about it real quick, is that you can see your day and your week at a glance. And so if you use a specific color for meetings, for instance, I use blue for meetings. So if I'm looking at my calendar and I see a lot of blue, I'm like, all right, got to get ready. I know I got a lot of meetings today. If it's yellow, I know I have a special event coming up. And so we can kind of talk through, I'm going to give examples of how I actually use color coding on the next slide, and then I'll show it to you in the demo. But it's really helpful to use color coding to help you understand what you're spending time on. So you can set up different color codes for different projects, for different clients, for different engagement types, for your kids, for your spouse or partner, for your hobbies, for volunteer activities. And you can see at a glance how much time you're spending on it or when you need to use it. Now, one of my coaching clients was an absolute genius, and I always have to share this for the ladies out there, that instead of using a color code for in-person meetings versus virtual meetings, she uses a color code for phone calls versus meetings that require her to put on makeup. And I thought this was genius, especially since she works from home. We all know now that there are days you wake up and you're working from home and you just don't want to do the thing. And so I thought it was genius because when she sees pink on her calendar, she knows that morning she needs to hop in the shower, actually do her hair and her makeup and look fresh-faced. And it like, I thought it was genius. I was like, that's great, because there are days when you're like, I just don't want to look on. I just want to put my hair in a messy bun and move on with my day. So for the ladies out there, there's a tip. You may want to just select a color that makes, it's a gentle reminder that you need to do the thing. So most email clients allow you to create colors or labels. The exception to this is iCal. So the iCal that is built into any Mac Apple product or the iPhone, you can't actually create labels or colors. You have to create multiple calendars, and we're going to cover that next. But first, let's jump into the demo, and let me show you just how simple this looks. So like I said, for team meeting, I want them all to be, or any meetings, I want them to all be dark blue, right? For my tasks, I want them to be, I'm just picking colors. I don't know, these are the actual colors I suggest. But for my tasks, I want them to all be a light green, or you can always schedule things as tasks. The only downside to this in Gmail is that if I were to create a task, let's create a new task here. We're just gonna put new task. I have to remember to change the calendar type. I have to, or make it a task. And then it will, the thing is you can like click off of it and make it go away, and it adds it to your task list. But if you're not using the task list, don't worry about that. But you can create different colors to make sure that you see your work time. I'm going to turn this pink. We'll do alpha. I forgot that was recurrence. Pink is all my personal stuff. So lunch is very personal to me. Or you can use a different color, green, for recurring tasks versus priority tasks, or you can use a different color for events, or different. So I'm going to show you what I actually do. And show you how I remind myself of it. But as you can see now, I can see I'm not very meeting heavy this week, but I do have some big projects I need to work on. So at a glance, I already know this about my week, and I can answer that in a matter of seconds. So as your calendar fills in, you're going to get really good insight into how you need to spend your time in the days coming up. This is also super helpful for when you get those emails that say, hey, I need help. Do you have time? And you're like, well, all these dark blue things, I can't move around. But you know what? On Tuesday, I can actually move my big task to the afternoon, and sure, I can work on it first thing in the morning. All right, so let's talk about what categories can you use. So this is just a starter list. This is one that I've used for myself. I've used for executives I've supported in the past. I've seen my coaching clients use. So kind of like pick and choose what you need. So I suggest having some differentiation between in-person meetings versus virtual. Right now, they're probably all virtual, but this is really helpful if you need to go to a conference room versus just call from your desk, those sort of, or if you are a person who needs to go meet people in person as part of like your regular form of business versus doing Zoom calls or phone calls. Conferences and expos, travel, anything urgent or just general reminders. So I will have reminders on my calendar. It says, don't forget to drop this off at Cameron School. And so it's just, or, don't forget to sign that permission slip before the kids go out the door. So it's nice to have those little reminders that pop up on your calendar and not have like sticky notes all over your life. And also, as I schedule it into my calendar, I don't do all day reminders. I don't do all day tasks. The point is to actually schedule the actual time in your calendar. So if I put a reminder on there, remember to mail in the check to the HOA, I actually have time set aside on my calendar to fill out the check and mail it to the HOA. So as you can see through the list, there's projects or clients or training and development. So if you're taking webinars like this, you can put it a different color. You can say, hey, I got that great webinar with Jen coming up on Thursday because, and know this because it's purple, so you can pick different things. I encourage you to have different colors or categories for different roles, not just also different activities, but we're going to talk about the different roles in your life when we get to multiple calendars. So what colors? Oh, I thought I had color coded this. Apparently I didn't take it to the next level, but as you can see, this is how I color code. So red is a reminder. Pink is for training and development, orange for business development. So any sort of, when you're working on your business, whether it's your work in your role or if you actually own a business, rather than in the business. So this is stuff that isn't actually like tasks. It's like, hey, we're doing a new strategy plan for our department. That's what business development would look like. I use yellow for holidays or events because yellow makes me happy. light green for local travel and dark green for big travel. So I actually differentiate between when I need to drive to another person's office versus when I'm flying somewhere. I actually live in the Phoenix Valley. So the way that I determine it is if I'm leaving the valley, I need to make it dark green. Light blue for in-person meetings, dark blue for a virtual meeting, light purple for business tasks, and then dark purple for personal tasks. And in Gmail, you're pretty limited, as you've seen in here, that if I click on it, I have a limited number of colors. In Outlook, you have the rainbow. So I would highly suggest that using different shades of a color is an excellent way to differentiate between similar categorical tasks. So you get creative with the color coding. And then the other thing that I encourage you to do is make sure you have a reference point for your color code. This is where I wish I could take off my camera and flip it around on my computer, but I'm actually just going to peel it off to show you. In Gmail, you cannot label your colors. You can in Outlook. Unfortunately, you get like the fun, like the Gmail colors, like flamingo. I kid you not, that's what it's actually called. It's not pink, it's flamingo. Tangerine, banana, because yellow is just too boring. In Outlook, you can actually change the labels of the colors. You can't do that in Gmail. So what I've actually done, I'm gonna hold this up to the camera, is I've screenshotted the colors and then I put it into a Word document and I typed what the colors stand for and I've taped it to my computer screen. So as I'm working through and I'm like, oh gosh, what color should this be again? Because everybody has that little brain fart that happens. I can reference down real quick, see it, and make sure the color coding stays consistent, because otherwise I would be like a bag of Skittles and I would just want to taste the rainbow and make everything all these different colors. So consistency is key. Now, if you're starting to get the feel for this and you're like, okay, this feels good, but my life is a little bit more complicated than this, or I want a little bit more compartmentalization, I got you. Multiple calendars are a great way to do this. And this sounds super crazy until you actually see it in practice. So it's an additional level of organization for the roles in your life. I kid you not. In my Gmail calendar that I actually use, not my demo calendar, I have a calendar for my business. I have a calendar for my kids. My husband and I have a household calendar. I have a calendar for my other line of business, and I have a calendar for my fitness because I like to pre-plan out my workouts. So I have all these different calendars so that they live in a compartmentalized world, and I can always toggle them on and off, because as you start filling in your calendar, you might start to get overwhelmed. You may just want to see certain things. Like, I don't need to see my kids' calendar all day, every day, so I just turn it off. I don't need to see my husband's calendar all day, every day, so I just turn it off, and then when I want to see it, I turn it back on. Then you also get greater privacy controls, and this is specifically talking to iCalendar users and Gmail users. Outlook has not quite figured out what you can share and what you can't share. And in fact, I don't think in Outlook you can even share your multiple calendar. I think you can only share your primary calendar, but it's great because then all your other calendars are private. But I love it because as you collaborate with people, you can determine which calendar they have access to. So in Gmail, it's really easy to do it. You just go to your settings. And right here, you just click the Add Calendar button. You just click Create New Calendar. You give it a name, give it a time zone, and then you hit Create Calendar. And it will show up on your sidebar here. And just like the birthdays one, I can click it on and off. So if I had something in the birthday calendar, or the reminders, you can turn it on and off, and you can give it any name. And the reason I really like using this too is that there's a greater extent of color options for the multiple calendars. So you can see there's a lot more here, and you can do custom colors based on hex codes. And if you don't know what hex codes are, Google it. It's the coding color that the internet uses to read colors. So this is great if you like want to compartmentalize even further. So say you volunteer for an organization and you're like, the work just needs to be completely separate, and maybe you want to use that calendar to collaborate with someone else. Create a calendar, share just that calendar, and create a different color and it's all set. So as you do this in like Outlook, I would recommend maybe doing your tasks as a separate calendar, anything personal as a separate calendar, and then you can turn them on and off, and it'll actually overlay them in your calendar so that you can see all the different pieces. I really love this tip. A lot of people skip over this because they're like, oh, that seems like a lot to manage. But once you've got it in there, it's super easy to place things on different calendars. In Outlook, you just have to be clicked on the calendar and you'll be adding things to that calendar. And then you click onto the next one. In Gmail, when you have multiple calendars, when you create the event like this down here, it's not showing it right now because I don't technically have multiple calendars turned on. It'll ask me what calendar to add it to. So it's really easy. And then at any point with all of these platforms, you can move things between the different calendars. So if something's living on one calendar and you want to move it to another, it's as simple as clicking a drop down, which is lovely. This is also what you need to use if you are going to be using iCal and you want to color code things. You have to create multiple calendars. They do not have an option right now for you to label things, which seems very un-Apple-like, but that's just the way it works. All right, so, oh, I skipped the how-to slide. So the how-to, so all email clients, they offer this, and then these are just some different ideas of calendars that I would use. Like I said, I use it for fitness and meal planning. My kids are on a completely different calendar. Different business operations. So if you run your own business and say you have like a social media team and they want to put things onto a calendar for you, you can create a social media calendar and then only allow them access for that. Same thing when you have different teams working on different projects, especially if you have like a task force team and it's a limited engagement team and you don't want to give them like free reign with your calendar, you can create a specific calendar that you guys can all collaborate on. There are a lot of systems that try to build this in. I know SharePoint used to do this. I think Microsoft Teams tries to do this now where you can build in a calendar so everybody can see it. But if you can build a calendar, a specific calendar that you share, that is built into your email system as opposed to an external tool, that is much more effective way of collaborating so that people aren't going to multiple places to see what everyone's doing. The final one that I just want to touch on is just a few tidbits. So these are just a few things that a lot of people skip over or they don't even know exists. And so these are like the little sweet tips that I want to throw in there for you. Use multiple time zone views or worldview and always use time zones. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. Gmail has the cleanest way of doing it. Outlook and iCal don't have worldview, but they do have multiple time zone views. And Outlook just increased the amount of time zones you can see to 3 instead of 2. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. What we're looking at is right here. You see, it says I'm on General Mountain Time. It shows up right here on the right-hand column or the left-hand column. If you go into your settings, you can click time zones. There's an option here to display a secondary time zone. And then it's going to ask me, what time zone do you want to see? And so I want to see Eastern time. Say I'm really bad at remembering when we're 3 hours apart or 4 hours apart or what have you. Maybe we'll just go Central time because it's not showing me New York. So, okay. So, and then you can also create labels. So I'm going to do Phoenix, Chicago, and I'm going to go back. And now you can see on the side right here, Chicago, the earlier time zone is always going to be on the left. So Chicago and then Phoenix. And so I can see we're 2 hours apart. So as I'm looking at time, I can kind of see right there on my sidebar. This is how it shows up in Outlook too. It's going to show up right on the side of your calendar. You can always see it. Now in Google, you can do worldview, and this is one of my favorite things in the world, especially if you're working for a global company or a company that spans the United States. So you've got tons of time zones to deal with. So you can do show world clock. This is under general, and you can either select it from the list or you can just scroll down to it, show world clock, and then you just add time zones. I'm just going to pick random time zones. Don't mind me. Detroit Eastern time just is like Phoenix Eastern time. You never know what you're going to get. Okay. So I have all these random locations. Say this is like all of the offices we work with and what have you. I can go back to settings and now the world clock is right here underneath my calendar. The great thing is that anytime when I click on this, oh, here we go. Not only am I clicking on the company all hands on the side, did you see what happened with the world clock? It's now showing me that's 8 a.m. in Phoenix, that's 7 a.m. in Yucatan, it's 11 a.m. in Detroit, it's 5 p.m. in Sudan. So this is great if you're referencing emails too, and you want to reference a meeting and say, just a reminder, we have a meeting at 8 a.m. Phoenix time, and for our team in Detroit, just a reminder, that's 11 a.m. It's a great customer service tool, but also helps you with scheduling to make sure that you're not scheduling meetings at all hours of the night, and it does all the conversion for you. For Outlook and for iCal, unfortunately, you'll need to use an external tool for this. There's lots of great websites that have this built in, but if you're a Gmail user, this is built straight into your interface. Please, please, please use it. And my last little bit of tidbit is if you are scheduling across multiple time zones, always send emails explicitly saying the time zones, and when you schedule it in the calendar, use the time zone that was agreed upon for everybody else. Don't try to do the math in your head. It'll save you a lot of stress. The next tip is to make travel easy. Write this down. This is my golden egg that I hand to every executive when I touch their calendar and when I work with coaching people. I'm a big fan of not having to sift through and find all the information when I'm traveling, especially with flights, right? You get to the airport and you're like, oh shoot, what was my flight number? What was my seat number? And unless you have a physical boarding pass, which how many of us really use a physical boarding pass? And unless you're like popping things open and looking for things, it's kind of hard sometimes to read the boarding passes too. So this is actually how I type it into the calendar. So in the subject line, I put the flight number, the departure time in the local time zone that I am departing in, and then my seat number if I have one. If it's Southwest, I put my boarding group number. In the location line, I put the arrival time in the local time of where I'm arriving to, and then my confirmation number. So I can glance at my calendar and I can see everything I need to know about my flight. This has saved my bacon so many times. It makes it really easy to travel too. And then the last thing is, in Outlook and in iCal and in Gmail, you can set your working hours. Here's a great little trick though. You don't have to use it for working hours. You can use it to set boundaries to control when meeting invites come through. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. If you go into your settings, let's see here, working hours, it's right on the side. Right here, you can say enable working hours, and I don't work on Saturdays and Sundays, no way. But what I also don't want to do is I don't want to be meeting all day long, right? I would prefer to only meet between 9 a.m. and 1 o'clock p.m. And I can copy that to all days, which is one of the best buttons in the world. So now when people go in to schedule meetings with me, what they will actually see is that it's grayed out on those other times. So when they go into meeting schedule, and then they'll also in Gmail likes to slap people on the hands. Gmail will actually send a note and say, this is outside of normal working hours. And what that does is it allows me to create a boundary that says, I prefer to only do meetings during this time. So if you are trying to schedule a meeting with me outside of those times, it will prompt them to check with me to make sure that's okay. So I've actually used this in Outlook too, to say I will only meet from this time to this time. And I tell you, it takes people some getting used to, but they absolutely will start just booking during that time or contacting you if they want to book out of it. So especially if you're using the scheduling assistant built into Outlook or built into Gmail, it will definitely like block everything else out for you. So you can kind of force people to only book with you during certain times, which is really magical. All right, so any questions? I did see some come in the Q&A. Oh, hi, thanks, Andrea. I'm so glad you're here. Okay, so what if you want to put that a person is on vacation for the day? I would typically make it an all-day task in Outlook, as you should. Blocking out for out of office First and foremost, please, please, please make sure that you are using statuses. So if you're free, busy, or out of office, I use tentative when I have meeting invites that it's not built into Google. So unfortunately you can't do that there, but in Outlook, I like using the tentative when I've given away time to people and I'm waiting to hear back. So say somebody emails me and they're like, hey, you know, I email them back and say, hey, I'm only available at 8 a.m. on Tuesday. And so I would put it in here as hold. I'm just gonna put that meeting because I'm not feeling clever for names today. Now, when I build it in Google, I actually make it appointment slots because it shows up differently on my calendar. If you don't like that, you can just put it in as an event and you're good to go. If you're using Outlook, use the tentative time space, or if you're pretty sure that the meeting invite's going to come through at that time, just block it out as busy. If you are having somebody who's going out of office for the day, one of the biggest issues with doing an all-day task for anything is different time zones. So if I'm going to be out of office here, and I can, in Google, you can click out of office and it automatically blocks the whole day for you. Here's what it happens is automatically, it's gonna ask you to automatically decline times, and this is your local time. So I'm just gonna say save and decline. But where's my, there it is. Everything's hiding on my desktop. The issue with this, and especially if you're working across multiple teams. So I used to work with a team that was in Ireland, one in Phoenix, one in California, and then one in India. And if you do all day holds for anything, like a all company meeting, a team meeting, out of office, what have you, it's going to show up in their time zone. So I would do it where you actually build it in like this and say, out of office. And Google's smart and it reads that you put out of office. I don't know if anybody knows that. And save and decline. Okay. So I would actually do it for like the time frame that they're actually out of office and use their time zones. So you can go in here and you can also specify that this is from, oh, it's because it's an out of office. You can specify the time. So I can say that it's from 12 a.m. to 12 p.m. or to 11 a.m. because or 11:30 p.m. I like doing that so it doesn't go over multiple days. So it only shows up like this, because what can happen is, say you send out a company hold meeting event or something like that on June 3rd, your team in India is now going to see it on June 3rd and June 4th. Or, you know, the team in Hawaii is going to see it on Tuesday the 2nd and Wednesday the 3rd. So a way to keep it clean is to actually just block it off across the entire calendar, or the calendar day, instead of doing an all day hold. The only time I use all day holds to block out is when I'm traveling. So say on Monday and Tuesday, I'm going to go to New York, which I'm not, and I hit, you know, I can put out of office, or I can just do an event and hit save. And then I can also make sure that this says that it says I'm free, so I can say that I'm busy. Unfortunately, Google also doesn't show busy free time the way that they showed in Outlook. If this was in Outlook and I marked that as busy, you would actually see a different color. It'd be a different, is it OpenSea? I don't think I said that right, but you would actually see it differently. It doesn't work that way in Gmail. The only thing that does that is out of office. So that's the only time I would do that, is if I was actually physically like away from my office and out of office in a specific way for traveling, because nobody really needs to know my travel plans across an organization. So if it carries over to Wednesday or Thursday, it's nobody's business but my own. But if you're doing things that people would need to reference or see on their calendars, I would block it off either during work hours or do it across a day. Does anyone have any other questions? I'm hoping that means I did a good job. All right. So, of course, last but not least, if you are looking at this and you're like, Jen, this is awesome. I want to know more. I want to explore my productivity and what I can do for myself and work out a system that works for me. I do offer that as a coaching package. I call it the Productivity Profile. If you are at all interested, please reach out to me via the email below, and I'd be happy to talk to you. And of course, I'm always happy to connect. So please feel free to shoot me an email. Go check out my website, join me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook, where I am always on there, always engaging, happy to answer questions, take suggestions. I will be sending out the replay after this. At the bottom of the replay email will be the list of webinars coming up. So I hope you will join me for future ones. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to meet with you. All right, so thank you again for taking time out of your day to join me. I will see you all next time. Thanks, everyone.